All right, how we drive word of mouth. So, word of mouth is the pinnacle. Every marketer wants to drive positive word of mouth. And negative word of mouth is probably the worst thing that you could possibly ask for. So, how do we get our content to spread via word of mouth is what we're going to talk about. We have to understand the mechanics that drive it in order to capitalize on it and use it to help enhance our sharing. So why is it so important? Because it's not just a positive thing you can put in a report, but word of mouth is the primary influencer behind 20 to 50% of all purchasing decisions. 20 to 50% of all purchasing decisions, not just online, not just offline, all of that. This isn't new information anymore. We all, like I said, know that word of mouth is extremely important. The mystery is how do you actually drive it? And this research was done by McKinsey, one of the top management consulting companies in the world. But again, the main question is how do we actually influence word of mouth in a cost-effective way? Even though I have limited amount of time, even though I have limited amount of staff, even though there's a lot of barriers to influence this. So I want to ask you a little bit of a poll to ask yourself, really, how much word of mouth do you think happens online versus offline? As we start to understand what drives word of mouth, it's helpful to understand this, and I'm interested what you think. So, definitely be honest with yourself. Would you choose A? I usually, when I give this in live presentations, I usually have people put out their hand. Like, how many people think it's A? 75% is online, 25% is offline. How many people think it's B? About half of word of mouth happens online and about the other half happens offline. And then C, only 25% happens online and 75% happens offline. So what would you pick, A, B, or C? Now, the real answer is none of these. So I know I fooled you, but the real answer is that 93% of word of mouth happens offline. 7% happens online. This research was done by the Keller Fay Group and has done it multiple times. And if we look at the trajectory of how this is changing, these numbers have not changed in the last, I think, 3 or 4 years, something like that. So the trajectory is not like, yes, it was mostly offline and now it's, online is rapidly catching up and it's the tide is tipping dramatically towards online now that we have all these internet and social media things, and that's not the case. So it's peculiar because I think a lot of times we look at offline conversations and we don't realize that a recommendation is being made at the water cooler, or someone across from dinner is saying something that is mentioning a brand or mentioning a product, and there's either a positive or a negative sentiment, and there's a recommendation, and there's a recommendation to not buy something, and all of that is very hard to quantify, and it happens so second naturally that we don't even think about it. Versus the online sharing is so visible. We see like YouTube videos that have millions of views, and we have like counters for everything on the internet, and so we can very tangibly see when something online is very popular and very liked and very shared a lot, and so it's constantly in our face, and we tend to overemphasize that a video is so easy to be shared and sent, and anyone in the world could see this video versus only a small number of people I interact with on a daily basis. So that's part of our misperception, but we really want to try to impact this offline word of mouth, and the whole industry is focusing on this 7%. So part of the reason for that is because that's the only part that you can really track in a scalable, easy, affordable way on an ongoing basis, quarter over quarter, and that sort of thing. Are we doing better or worse than last quarter? It's really hard to track the offline stuff. It's really hard to track someone at dinner making a recommendation. You'd have to do focus groups and research studies with, it's expensive and you can't do it all the time. So But regardless, as marketers, we should try to influence this word of mouth that happens offline that will definitely spill over into also driving our online metrics. So one thing that's worth noting is that the number one place that people go to after having one of these offline word of mouth conversations is Google. So if your content, and I'm going to make the argument that our content online is able to influence this offline word of mouth, if you're able to do that and you're able to set up your search, your website and your content ranking for certain key terms and things, that you can spark conversation with your content and capture the search volume traffic on Google and build that into a conversion funnel. So from a holistic perspective, our content can influence the word of mouth to actually happen, and the search can help convert them and get them to our website where maybe they can buy something or share something online. So that's kind of the big picture, argument for how we can start to take advantage of this. And like I said, here's this couple, sitting by the San Francisco Bay Bridge and having a conversation, which could be mentioning any sorts of brands or products. And in fact, consumers have about 16 product conversations a day. And we don't think about that, but it's very natural and it's very much a part of our everyday life. And so, the right message can help to impact these daily conversations that, what people happen to talk about on Monday morning after the weekend, very likely could be your piece of content if it is catching enough. And if we look at how we drive that 93% of offline word of mouth, the number one place is not online content, but the number one most cost-effective way is the internet with online content being the driver of that word of mouth versus TV is the number one influencer, but it also is extraordinarily expensive. And so in terms of cost effectiveness from an ROI perspective, online content is the best way to go for that. And again, the right message will impact that offline conversations as well as the online conversations. So, that's where the rest of this course will get into crafting the message that will impact average people and influencers, and it will impact offline conversations as well as the online conversations. So this is the conceptual framework for making the case why these are important. The rest of this class is important to focus on generating content that is actually shocking, actually interesting, actually stands out dramatically, because that's what's going to do. That is what is going to reach these groups of people.